Today I'm going to share with you guys the secrets of duck herding. Go, go, go! Go, go, go! Go, go, go! Go, go, go! Come on! One of my favorite parts about owning ducks and working with ducks is the fact that you can herd them. Ducks have extremely strong flocking instincts, meaning they don't like to be separated. They like to move as a clustered bunch. They stay close for safety and protection to each other. And as their farmer, I enjoy exploiting that fact in how I manage them. As I think about it, right, I think that ducks are more like sheep and cattle. The ducks, the sheep, the cattle, they want to stay together. They are herd animals or flock animals. They want to, cluster together, and they can be driven from behind. So the first secret in duck herding that I want to reveal is always focus on driving them. Think about it like you're the rear wheel drive of a truck, and you're pushing them. The direction that they will always want to move in is away from me. And so you can actually use that instinct as a way to push them forward and push them in the direction you want to move. So for example, watch this. So see how when I went behind them, they started to move away, and when I would move to one side, they would go to the other side? That's how you take advantage of that sort of flock mentality. And they're essentially responding to me like a predator who's pursuing them, and so they want to move away. The second secret I'd like to offer up is that you should always make yourself as wide as possible. Another feature of the duck's predator-prey instinct is they might split apart when a predator gets too close. And if you're making yourself narrow, you run the risk of splitting them, and they can kind of go in multiple directions. It'll always make your duck herding experience much more frustrating if you split them apart and you now have 2 or 3 groups of ducks moving in different directions. I'm not really sure if those words even make sense, so let me try to show you what I mean right now. So did you see that? As I got closer and closer, they kind of broke apart. When you keep a wide stance and you spread your arms like this, or when I was first learning to herd ducks, I would often use like a couple of gardening stakes to just, make myself really wide. What you're doing is you're creating a wider force that keeps them from breaking apart, because there's no advantage for them from a predator-prey instinct perspective to split apart. They actually want to try to stay together. Now the third secret I want to offer up is that you should move at a duck's pace. It's important to recognize that you don't want to move too fast. If you do, you run the risk of panicking your flock of ducks, and they're going to spread apart, they're going to move in different directions, they're going to panic, they could hurt themselves, all sorts of stuff happens. And so what you want to do is move at a very slow, deliberate pace. This puts the pressure on the ducks to move forward, but it also prevents them from panicking and trying to scatter everywhere. So let me show you the difference in kind of what I mean by this. But now, as I'm moving at their pace, things are pretty cool. And recognize you're gonna have some ducks that are slower than other ducks, and that's okay. But it's really important not to try to move too quickly with your ducks. And when you're working with them, move at your duck pace. Now the fourth secret I would offer up is use your left and right arms as turn signals. One of the quirkier things that I've found about herding ducks is that they will absolutely respond to some left hand and right hand movement. And if I want them to go left, I'm gonna go like this with my right arm. And if I want them to go right, I do this with my left arm. What that does is they see that movement, and I think that that makes them respond to go in the opposite direction of that movement. And so you're taking advantage of that flight instinct that ducks have as they see themselves as prey. Let me show you an example of that. One of the things that I think is important to recognize is with ducks, much like cattle or sheep, they gravitate towards a chute, and you can use a chute to guide them. So for example, when I was originally training my ducks, one of the things I would often do is use the fencing that we had as a way to sort of corral against them. And so I would try to push them along the fencing line as a way to move them in the direction that I wanted. So in my earliest days of herding and training the ducks, what I found is that using fences as guides that I could push them along made my job so much easier. You know, when you have just ducks in an open field, there's so many different directions that they can run in. But if you have like a fence or a border to push them along, there's really only one or two directions for them to run in. So it's easier to drive them along that. Like I remember when I was first trying to train them to go into the duck house, when I was saying, all ducks go to bed. You know, there are a couple of things that I used to train them. Number one, I incented them with food by putting food inside their house so they would associate going into their house as a good thing. Number two, I would use myself and the loud noise I was making as a driver and really use that to push them. And number three, I set up little mini fences at the mouth of the entrance to the duck house so that it would force them to actually go in a specific direction, which was inside the house, which was the direction I wanted. After time and after some practice, they were trained to do it and they would instinctually want to go inside the house. But in those initial days, the way I would help them understand that they needed to do that was use the fencing to force them into the action that I wanted. We seem to have this seasonal pond that forms right here at the base of our pasture. The ducks love coming down here. Pretty much from the period of mid-April all the way into mid to late May. This area that I'm standing in right now often turns into this giant seasonal pond. It often makes me wonder if it would make sense to actually dig out a certain part of this area and make it a permanent pond. Who knows, I might try to do that someday. But for right now, it's just a matter of letting the ducks get good enjoyment out of this area during its flooding season. And what I think I'm gonna find is that this is gonna be probably some of the best pasture I've got as I get into the summer months. Now I know the ducks are enjoying themselves right now, but because of all the ice and snow, I can't put my electric poultry netting down to protect them from predators. And I've got to go run a couple errands off farm, so I'm gonna need to bring them back up to the duck yard. So let's see how well I can herd them. Let's go ducks! Let's go ducks! Come on! Come on! Up we go ducks! Up we go ducks! Go ducks! Let's go ducks! Come on! I will make the analogy that moving ducks is a lot more like driving a boat than driving a car. You have to kind of move in big patterns and you have to be willing to sort of drift with the water. Let's go ducks! 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 Up we go, out of the water, everybody out of the pool. Let's go ducks! Let's go ducks! Come on ducks, let's go! Let's go! Let's go ducks! Come on! Come on! Let's go ducks! Come on! Let's go! Come on duckies! Come on! So, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but little barn cat is right there off camera and she kind of wigged the ducks out. We'll be able to get her. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's go ducks. 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 Come on ducks. Let's go. Back into your house. Come on. Let's go ducks. Come on.